The Helena State School for Boys has been the target of many of the recent allegations of child abuse. Horror stories of hog-tying and staff abuse at Helena surfaced in a series of published reports last week.
When this incident occurred,
This week, attention is focused on abuse incident files which are supposedly missing and on an internal department audit which supposedly confirms that the files are gone. All week, reporters have asked department officials to produce the audit. The officials today formally declined to show the audit to the media. However, they did produce the person responsible for keeping the files, Helena's school superintendent, Tom Jaworski.
The audit lists some sequential numbers missing from those files. I might add that after going back through the boxes, after checking files, every single report form was found. Every single sequential security report form was listed and has been listed and was found. There are no reports missing from that institution.
Welfare Department officials will face questions from senators next week as well as from reporters. 8 department officials will travel to Washington to meet behind closed doors with the Senate subcommittee, which is looking into allegations of abuse in Oklahoma's juvenile care system. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at the State Department of Human Services.
Photographer Stan Black went to Poland as part of a relief effort. 50 tons of powdered milk were sent to the country's children by a religious foundation, and Black went along to make sure it got to the people who needed it. He was able to videotape for verification purposes, but only where and when the government allowed it.
The government let us know that we were going to be watched and everything that we did by the military, that everything was bugged, our hotel room was bugged, our phone calls were bugged. They wouldn't let us shoot anything outdoors, being afraid that we would shoot a strategic bridge or a military building of some sort that we could bring back to the United States and show our government or something. I didn't know what the reasoning was, but that's just my speculation.
Black did manage to get one shot of a food line in Warsaw, but he says he didn't see any obvious signs of oppression. However, he says the Polish people seem to be suffering from very low morale. They walk with their heads down and are not allowed to congregate in groups larger than 3. The week he spent visiting daycare centers distributing milk convinced him of the Polish people's need of foreign aid, and he says he hopes the American people will continue to provide it. Ted Brown, Action 4.
Perhaps you've seen signs like these in your local supermarket or grocery store. It would lead you to believe there is a serious shortage of pennies. But actually, Oklahoma has not been affected as much as other parts of the country. The Federal Reserve Bank in Oklahoma City acts as a wholesaler of coins to local banks. The federal government in Oklahoma City says it has plenty of pennies thanks to the efforts of local supermarkets and businesses that have encouraged people to keep the 1-cent coins in circulation. Of course, individual banks can do what they want. If there is a slight shortage, it's not because people are hoarding pennies for the value of copper. Copper doesn't mean that much these days.
There is a shortage, but primarily the pennies don't move. Frankly, they're a little bit of a nuisance item to people, and I think probably in every bureau drawer in Oklahoma we do have a few pennies stacked up there, but as near as we can tell, there's no concerted effort to hoard pennies at all. And that's good, and that's what's helping Oklahoma as opposed to other states surrounding us.
Nevertheless, the government is issuing a new zinc penny soon to offset the threat of a serious penny shortage. Then the federal government will have to worry about people hanging on to zinc pennies, just for the novelty of it. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at the Federal Reserve Bank downtown.
There are some 1,000 units in the Shadow Ridge apartments on Findlay in North Pennsylvania, making it one of the city's largest apartment complexes. Even a small blaze could spell disaster. With that in mind, and the memory of another fire in a large apartment complex just days ago, fire units from 3 cities responded to the blaze. The fire broke out shortly before 4 in a unit on the far west side of the complex. Firemen searched through the 4 damaged apartments for anyone who might have been trapped, but the fire and smoke ravaged only property.
We had a fire in this same unit in the laundry room about a month ago, so at this point we don't know where it started or how or anything about it. The 4 units are vacant.
Firemen were forced to tear open sections of the roof and siding to stop the flames from spreading to other apartments. Firefighters battled the blaze for a few hours before being assured that the blaze was completely out and that it posed no threat to the residents. A cause of the blaze has not yet been determined, and officials don't have a damage estimate to the property. Debbie Nash, Action 4.
The abuse allegation came to light earlier this month in a series of reports in the Muskogee Phoenix. The newspaper said 14-year-old Kevin M. was whipped with a short white belt by youth guidance specialist James Scott. Today, the Human Services Department opened its files on the Kevin M. incident. The newspaper story failed to mention the fact Kevin M. changed his story 3 days after the alleged incident occurred. Investigator: do you think the man was abusing you? Kevin: I don't know. Investigator: you're the one that is going to have to say he was or wasn't abusing you. Kevin: okay, I will say no. Other department files tonight show that James Scott, the employee accused of whipping Kevin M., was fired from his job less than a month after the incident occurred. However, the department says Scott's firing had nothing to do with any whipping. They claim he was fired for excessive absenteeism. They say that he missed more than 85 workdays in less than 2 years. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at the State Department of Human Services.
A viewer writes in and asks, if we sell our home and within 2 years buy a less expensive home to live in temporarily, then we rent that house and buy another more expensive house, how will this affect the taxes on the money received on the original house that we sold? Well, you must compute your taxable gain on the sale of the first house, and then if you purchase a more expensive home within 2 years, the cost of the rent house will be disregarded, and the gain on the first house will be carried then to the third house. If the third house costs more than the net sales price of the first, then all income may be deferred by reducing your tax basis in your new home. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs. A viewer writes in and says, is there any law that states that any store can refuse a payment? And if they do, does that not mean the account is paid in full? Well, if the payment is made on what could be called an open-ended account, such as a credit card, then the company must accept the payment and credit your balance with the amount. If it is a fixed amount that is due and you tender less than the amount owed, the store can reject your payment and bring suit to recover the full amount. The refusal of a payment does not discharge the obligation to pay in either case. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs.
When you hear the word unemployment, you don't think of farming. But in a sense, many farmers are unemployed. Bad economy, high interest rates have forced them to plant less, and the result is a smaller harvest. Here in Oklahoma, one of the main reasons for that is the lack of rail service. For when the Rock Island rolled out of town for the last time, so did the good fortune of a lot of farmers. Terrell Naka and Ira Riley are both in the farming business. For years, a business that went hand in glove with railroading. Naka, a farmer, grew the crops. Riley, the co-op manager, shipped them out on the Rock Island. Or so it went before the rock turned into a patch of weeds. The arithmetic is simple. No train service means grains and crops must be hauled by truck. And trucking is more expensive for farmers and consumers.
The farmer is being penalized, and they in turn will have to be penalized also in their costs, and the bread and other things that they use will also be reflected in the retail price. And these tractors sure have been here a long time.
Yeah, here's an example right here.
Aside from hard, cold economics, farmers have always had a romance of sorts with the railroad. In Hydro, the nostalgia dates back to 1931.
I think when you see the deterioration of rail service, I think you're seeing an end to a certain amount of development and further development in an area. We need it back very definitely, as soon as possible.
As soon as possible may be a consideration at the Governor's Conference on Rail Service beginning tomorrow in Oklahoma City. Naka and Riley hope so. Larry Otis, Action 4, Hydro.
This might be a typical scene from any home across Oklahoma. Mother and daughters preparing the evening meal, a family working together. The difference here is that none of these people are related. This is one of the welfare department's girls' group homes for deprived teenagers. The 9 girls who live here have all lived in state-run institutions like the Whitaker Home or the Oklahoma Children's Center in Taft. If the welfare department gets its way, non-delinquent kids would no longer be sent to the big institutions. Instead, they live in community-based group homes like this one. The kids think that's a good idea.
At Whitaker, you don't have as much freedom as you do here. And you can see your friends here, you know, on visitation nights, and you can't there, and you can go out with your friends here, and you can't there.
We get a lot more freedom, but yet there is a lot of responsibility that goes along with it. And the way I've been looking at it since I've been here is it's more like just us girls living here, and the house parents just sort of stay to keep us in line.
Well, like when you're in an institution, people look at you like, you know, you must be really bad, you must have really done something just to be in an institution, and half the people there haven't really committed no crime or anything. Because when I went to Whitaker, I was just there because I didn't have another foster home.
The welfare department would like to place more of its kids in foster homes, but the doors to foster homes have been shut for most adolescents. Foster parents prefer younger kids. The teenagers who live here will tell you a group home is the next best thing to a private home. Scott Wallace, Action 4, Northwest Oklahoma City.
What's left of the once proud Rock Island Railroad is rusting away in Oklahoma and other states. Over a dozen of the states affected by the shutdown have representatives in Oklahoma City at a two-day meeting called by Kansas Governor John Carlin and hosted by Governor Nye. Also at the meeting is this man, Railroad Trustee William Gibbons. He is in charge of parceling out the railroad to would-be buyers like the state of Oklahoma. Gibbons has been the target lately of much criticism, with people like Republican Senator Nancy Kassebaum of Kansas accusing him of not acting fast enough on the railroad's liquidation.
I believe that the trustee has been recalcitrant and has really failed to try and accept some of these offers and negotiate in good faith. He has believed that the price has been too low. In some instances, I'm sure he's right.
Gibbons says he is looking out for the estate's creditors, believing they should not have to subsidize the public interest in the Rock Island by selling it off for a cheap price. Tomorrow, more discussion on the economic, defense, and energy problems created by the shutdown of the Rock. Officials hope to leave Oklahoma City with some answers to their questions and the promise of some type of action from Trustee Gibbons soon. Tony Stizza, Action 4.
Turn them on again.
Cattlemen and farmers in the state of Oklahoma have been hit hard the past few years. Some experts say they can expect more hard times. In order to keep going, most of them just keep borrowing against their land, which keeps escalating in value.
Just the whole program has been in an inflationary trend. 15 years ago, the valuation of farms was based on the productive capacity of those farms, not on an inflationary situation.
Larry Wilcox has been an agricultural consultant for the past 13 years. He's been in the farm loan business since 1926. Wilcox says the #1 problem in agriculture is greed.
Not greed on the part of the farmers, but greed on the part of moneylenders, on the part of people seeking tax shelters, on labor with their accelerating costs.
Wilcox says 15 years ago, land was appraised on its productive capacity. Now the valuation of attractive land is based on what someone will pay for it. We hear so much about young men not being able to farm now. Wilcox feels it will be easier for them to get into the business in the next few years because he expects to see some good deals then. Ben McCain, Action 4.
Oklahoma is the 5th largest oil-producing state in the nation. Rigs like this one are familiar sights along our highways. But some of us may not be familiar with the danger involved in working on a rig such as this. In 1980, 1,187 claims were filed as a result of oil drilling accidents. It's believed that 1981's figures will be even higher. You're watching probably the most dangerous part of the job. These men are adding on an additional section of pipe to drill deeper. The combination of heavy equipment and lots of people raises the risk of an accident. But according to these workers, accidents don't happen very often.
But the only accidents that happen in the oil field are the ones that people cause themselves. They're just not watching. You have to look out for yourself and everybody around you, just like driving a car.
In a way, roughnecking is like driving a car, because the more cars there are on the road, the greater the chance of a wreck. The more oil rigs there are, the greater the number of reported injuries. The way Oklahoma's oil production is booming, we shouldn't expect a decrease in that number. Sherry Sellers, Action 4.